We're off for a little walk today up to Hoad Hill and the Hoad Monument, which is that thing up there. A little bit of a climb, but we'll take our time and have lunch at the top. Oh, there's a coffee shop. That might be handy. So the Hoad Monument is a monument to Sir John Barrow, who was, let me see if I can get this right, I'm reciting from memory here, second Secretary to the Admiralty between 1804 and 1845. And this is a monument in the shape of a lighthouse, even though it's not a functional lighthouse. See the birds circling up there. Don't know if those are buzzards. They might just be big crows. Might be ravens or something. I did hear a raven. Yeah. So a little bit of a climb to get up the top there, but yeah, like I say, we'll take our time. So the monument is modelled after the Eddystone Lighthouse, and seems like the original design might have had it as a functional lighthouse. It does look out over the bay, Morecambe Bay there. We'll get a better view of that from up the top. And the original design had a basement apartment or basement cottage or something like that, basement room for a lighthouse keeper to live. And interestingly, the lighthouse keeper's position, it's an honorary title, it's been maintained, and so there is still an official lighthouse keeper. Doesn't live here, but I think that's the person who comes and opens it up occasionally for people to climb to the top of the monument. I think it's open on bank holidays and Sundays for people to enter and climb to the top to get the view from the top of the lighthouse. So we won't be able to do that today. There would be a flag flying, I think, on that flagpole if it was open to the public today. Anyway, we'll just have to trek up there and have a look. Now, interesting, I can see a marker on a stone up there. I'm just going to go and see what that is. Unclear. There's a little platform across here and across there. There is a very steep path up to the top this way, but I don't think we'll be taking that one today. I think we'll take the more circuitous route that goes around and loops back. It's almost like there's a little boundary of stones around this bit here. Almost like this was a little cottage or maybe a chapel at some point. So we could go up this slope here, but I think we'll follow the made track, which I think loops back round. Tremendous view from up here across Morecambe Bay. Tide's in at the moment. We will head down there later to have a look at Morecambe Bay because it's quite phenomenal, even though it's just an estuary, but it's so huge, and when the tide is out there's this vast sand and shingle flat, famous for its shellfish, but the enormity of it is something I'm not sure it's going to come across very well on camera. We drove along the coast road yesterday on the way back to the lodge and drove past it with the tide out, and it just goes on and on and on. Yeah, I think they're ravens or carrion crows maybe. It's quite a way down. I think the summit is about 400 feet, 400 and something feet above sea level, so not a mountain, but quite a hill. Nearing the top now, and yes, you can probably hear me breathing. So over there in the distance, some proper mountains. We won't be climbing any proper mountains on this trip. I'm not quite sure I'm equipped for it. In case you're wondering, dog is on the lead. Well, partly because the sign said so, and the sign said so because there are sheep on the hill here, and Eva will chase them. She only wants to play with them, but the sheep don't know that. This is the track we'll be following on the way back down. It's a little bit more shallow and it loops around the back of the hill back to where we started. Well, that's interesting. There's another thing over there to the left of those wind turbines. Is that just another wind turbine? I think it is. I thought it was another monument, but no, it's just a wind turbine turned sideways to us. Right, onward to the monument. Yeah, so as you can see, there are sheep here grazing the hill, and we should have some pretty spectacular views from up here. Similarities between this and the Hardy Monument, the Thomas Hardy Monument in Dorset, another important figure in the Royal Navy. So I suppose this is what you get if you are an important figure in the Navy in the 1800s or thereabouts. You get a big tower on top of the hill when you die. So the view from up here, the town of Ulverston down here, Morecambe Bay. I don't know the name of that island there. I don't think that's Peel Island. Peel Island is out that way somewhere, possibly behind that headland over there. On a clear day we should be able to see Blackpool Tower from here. I can see a tower way over there, but I'm not sure I'm looking in the right direction, or if indeed that is the right thing. Jenny's got the binoculars though, so we will get confirmation. Just had a little peep through Jenny's binoculars. Over there, let me get my finger lined up properly for the camera. Over there is the Blackpool Tower. I'll take a photo which I'll be able to zoom in a bit more than I can the footage on this camera. Now with all these sheep around, we could do some gleaning of wool. There are just various bits of little stray bits of wool here in the grass. I could pick up a load of that and do some wool felting, some needle felting. I don't really feel like carrying a bag of unwashed wool home with me from here though, so not today. but the view up here is quite stupendous, and I'm certain the camera is not doing it justice. So when the tide goes out, this entire bay turns to one enormous flat expanse of sand and shingle, very famous for cockles and other shellfish, very infamous for its fast moving tides. There's a sad incident burned into everybody's memory of some cockle pickers who were out there ill-equipped to pick cockles. They were too far out, and when the tide comes in across this bay, you can't outrun it because it's so level and flat, or so very nearly level and flat. When the tide comes in, you can't be there. It becomes impossible to walk on the soft sand, and unfortunately a load of people drowned because they couldn't get away quick enough. The metal strip you see there is a lightning conductor. This tower was struck by lightning while it was still being constructed. Obviously, being the highest point for miles around, it is a common target for lightning. Here's one of these panorama markers, which is very useful. So yeah, that confirms. You can see where loads of people have put their finger on Blackpool Tower, and yeah, that is what we saw over there. I don't know that you're going to be able to see it on the camera. So from here you can see hills in North Wales, Grisdales, actually I think this is, so okay, this is the full panorama, so I'm not looking in the right direction. So Blackpool Tower is lined up, but this is the full horizon. So Grisdale's over there somewhere, I think. So round on the north side here, there's another panorama sign. So we'll see if we can figure out what we're looking at over there when this gentleman's finished. So yeah, another lightning conductor on the other side. How about that? Belt and braces. It's a shame we couldn't have gone up there. Like I say, it's only open on bank holidays and I believe Sundays in the school holidays. So yeah, we're not going to get to go up inside. Not sure whether the dog would have been allowed anyway. Right, so over here, Scafell Pike, and I think that's the tallest mountain in England. Not high by international standards, it's not a competition. The Old Man of Coniston, and then round to Brantfell over there. So yeah, the town of Ulverston spread out before us. And the Ulverston Canal down there, which has got some scenic walks alongside of it. And if you're visiting here and you don't know whether to climb the hill to get inside the tower, you're looking for a flag on this flagpole. If there's a flag flying, it means you can go inside the tower and climb to the top. It is a spiral staircase. But yeah, you're looking for a flag on that flagpole, which you would be able to see from down at the car park. So that's how that works. So we will follow this rather more gently sloping path back down, have a bite to eat, and then this afternoon which will also be in this video, we're going to head out and have a look at the sands at Morecambe Bay. You can see the tide's already going out, sandbars are starting to appear. So I think we'll sit down here and have a bite of lunch and just take in the view. So on our way back down, I think we'll just stop and spend a moment appreciating the skill that went into building this dry stone wall. This is not just a heap of rocks, and it's not a conventional wall built with cement and stone. This is a dry stone wall built by just stacking and interlocking rocks. So it's a case of choosing the rock that fits the space to make the wall. No cement required. They stand for decades, centuries even, and if they get knocked down, you can just rebuild them from the materials that are right there. And these are built from rocks just dug out of the hillside here. Which are probably a similar mix of rocks that we saw on the beach down at Walney Island the other day. Although I'm not seeing quite so much granite in the mix here. So how about that? A little spring coming straight out the hill. I'm tempted to follow this up to its source. I think it's only just up there. I'm just going to have a wander up here. We are leaving the path, but I will do no damage, because the source of this spring can't be very far away. Well, it turns out it's actually a land drain. So there's a clay pipe land drain that runs under this field here. So the catchment will be the field on top here. And the water just trickles out the side of the hill. So yeah, it turns out the source of that spring is not quite as romantic as I'd thought it was going to be. I thought we were going to find a crack in a rock with an artesian well surfacing here or something like that, but it turns out that's just a land drain. Although before that land drain was installed, there was very likely still seepage straight out of the ground and probably a little spring there. You can see a slight depression. The watercourse there has probably been there longer than that pipe has. The dry stone wall here has broken down and been knocked down or just tumbled down, and the landowner or farmer has just chosen to replace it with a wire fence. In fact, there's a wire fence all the way along, so I wonder if they're kind of expecting the thing to fall down, which is a shame. But although not judging, you know, wire fences are quite reliable, but it does give us a chance to see the anatomy of this dry stone wall. So you can see that the rocks have been put in with a flat face outwards and kind of pointy end inwards on both sides, and then there's an infill in the middle there that's smaller little shards of rock just to fill in the gap in the middle, and that helps to tie it all together. So on the outside you've got these flat faced rocks, and all of the void in the middle is filled with bits of smaller jagged rock that tie it all together. So that's the inside of the dry stone wall. That's how they're traditionally built. The cows are all lying down. Does that mean it's going to rain? Or does it just mean the cows want to lie down? the latter, I think. It doesn't seem to be a day where it's going to rain. So here's a wall where we can really see how those stones have been put with their flat faces here to create a kind of sheer flat face to the wall. Inside it's all irregular, and then on the other side the other flat faces of the other rocks facing out the other way. Now the chief enemy of dry stone walls, and this is not going to be a Spanish Inquisition speech, the chief enemy of dry stone walls is frost. So when these things get water in them and the water freezes, it can just inch the rocks apart and cause them to just move a little bit every time it freezes and thaws and freezes and thaws. And so that freeze-thaw cycle can sometimes cause the rocks to just walk a little bit. Part of the reason they're constructed the way they are means that if it's done properly and if it's done perfectly, that freeze-thaw cycle tends to lock the whole wall together more tightly. But of course nothing's ever perfect. They're made from irregular rocks. So that's one of the things that can cause these walls to just fall down. It's just freezing and thawing repeatedly. And they do get some winters up here in the north. I've just squeezed through this kissing gate, which is made for people a bit slimmer than me. But that's a nice old-fashioned kissing gate. Look at that. And then down this little lane we've got a lovely view of the monument up there. And as we can see across the bay there, across Morecambe Bay, you can see more sand starting to be exposed because the tide is falling. So by the time we get down there, it's going to be low tide. And then the one feature of these dry stone walls that I haven't talked about is these capstones on top. They might even be called keystones, I don't know. But anyway, see, you've got the two layers there. You've got the facing stones on the outside, you've got the infill in the middle there, and then it's tied together with these flat stones on top, which are leaned up against each other to kind of lock the whole wall together. So this is Morecambe Bay. The tide is not remotely out yet. There's another 3 hours or so until the tide fully drops. But it does come in right to here. And it's already half a mile out. And you can see sandbars appearing, and you can see further out that you just see signs of it getting shallow. When we drove along here yesterday, the tide was fully out, and all you could see was sand across this whole bay. And we drove about 5-6 miles down that way, and again all you could see was sand as far as the eye could see. Anyway, gonna have a wander around, see what we can find. We're following this fast flowing little stream. And then we'll go for a walk across the sand flats down here, over this way. But this is a rather unusual stream because it's fresh water at the moment, flowing that way. When the tide comes in, this will be full of seawater. So you can see some seaweed growing on the bottom there, even though this is running fresh at the moment. I don't know how you get over there. The river divides. There's a ditch along here, you can't get across. Now, something curious about this little creek, and this is a creek. This is a tidal inlet that's just draining at the moment. So this is not actually a river, I don't think, or a stream. This is what we in the UK would call a creek, because it's a tidal inlet. It fills up with the incoming tide, empties again on the falling tide. That's what a creek is in England. Anyway, what looks like gravel in the bottom of there is not actually gravel at all. That's cockle shells. The entire bed of this little creek is cockle shells. Now, even though this is sand, it's not exactly golden sand. This is an estuary, and so there is a bit of mud in the mix here. As you can probably see on Eva's paws if she stands still long enough. As far as Eva's concerned, this is the perfect running surface because it's slightly soft, it's completely flat, and she can really get up to speed on it. Okay. Even in quite short grass, Eva's little feet tend to get tripped up. So on a surface like this, quite interesting for her, quite speedy running surface. No, I think we're stopped now. I think we're stopped now because look at you. You've got a face full of sand. Here we've got almost like a little coastline in miniature. And everything that isn't sand here is shells. Little clam shells. There's a cockle shell. These are little smooth clams of some sort. Hello. Why don't you do a dig in? Find me some clams. And the tide's falling. I mean, look how far we are from the cars already. The tide's falling. And I think probably if I walked in this direction at a steady walking pace, I won't get my feet wet until the tide starts coming back in again. Because the water is now falling. Well, it's not falling fast, but it's receding fast because it's so shallow. But I can see a change happening down here. So we're getting to the edge of the sand and we're going to go on to a more shingly material. I think that's the shellfish beds. Do need to be a little bit careful of quicksand down here, but it's not something to fear. It's not like in the films where it sucks you under. It's just something to, well, avoid primarily. I'm not going to walk on the shiny bits. But yeah, look at all the shells, all the clam and cockle shells everywhere. These are all empty. So these are little clams that never even made it to maturity. The unfortunate remains of a jellyfish here. In case you're wondering, I'm not going to try to rescue that and take it back out to sea because, for one thing, I think it's probably already dead, but also it's just not safe for me to try to walk out there, and also how would I even pick that up? Oh look, ASMR beach walk. All of these shells are empty and dead. Now what I took for more gravelly material out here is actually just the same sand, but with a bit more of a wavy texture. So shellfish beds are probably still further out, and all of these shells we're seeing here didn't originate here, although I don't know. I haven't got anything to dig with, and I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to dig here for shellfish. I haven't checked that out before we came. So anyway, all of these shells probably washed up to where they are at the moment. There's a different shell. That one I believe is a piddock. I'm not sure. It's a very thin papery shell. Could probably break that with my fingers. So I've got several different species. I've seen a couple of oyster shells around as well. And yeah, just in the half hour we've been here, the tide has dropped yet further. You can see a big sandbar appearing now in the middle out there. And if we were to drive up this way, which we might do in a minute, it's just sand, sand, sand. And it's very, very fine sand. Go on, keep going. Tell me if you find any cockles. This little feature's kind of fun. A little canyon in miniature. As the water's drained off the beach here into this stream, it's carved out a miniature canyon. And of course it's looking for features like this on the surface of Mars that has led researchers and scientists to figure out that there was flowing water on the surface of Mars at some point. One thing I'm a little surprised not to find here so far is marsh samphire. Haven't seen any marsh samphire at all, or actually sea purslane either, so it's obviously not that kind of a salt marsh. Perhaps a little bit too free draining when the tide's out. So that's our first stop along the coast road, and as you can see, it's changed since we got here. In the hour since we've been walking around, sandbars have been exposed all the way out there. So what we're going to do now, jump back in the car, we'll drive down the coast that way a little bit more, find another place to stop and see if there's anything else interesting to see. Okay, so we've driven about 8 or 10 miles down the coast to Moat Hill. That's Moat Hill there, and all you can see is these sand flats. The tide's gone out even further. All you can see is sand now. The composition of the beach again is about 50% broken shells and 50% grit and gravel and sand, and then we've got these things, and I think these are worm casts from some sort of, yes, you see a little divot and then a worm cast to one side of it. So there'll be a U-shaped burrow underneath that with, I think, a worm inside of it rather than a clam. But there's a whole shore full of them. The tide's quite significantly out now. Now I keep on calling this Morecambe Bay, and this is Morecambe Bay, but Morecambe is on the other side of the water, over there somewhere. Lancaster and Morecambe over on the other side of this enormous estuary. And like I say, I don't think the camera is probably doing justice to exactly how vast this really is. It's a good beach for digging. Right, so I think perhaps, well, the tide is still falling, so we still have a couple of hours until the tide is at its lowest extent, and I can't even see the water anymore over there. But I think what we'll do, we'll have one more little stop somewhere down that way, and then we'll wrap it up. So we drove all the way down. We're now on Roa Island, or Roa Island, I don't know how you pronounce it, and that's Peel Island over there. Peel Island famously has a king who is the pub landlord. You can get a ferry across to Peel Island from here, or you can actually walk to it from Walney Island across the sand, but they say you need a guide for that, and it seems like the sort of walking that maybe you might end up with waist deep mud or something if you do it wrong, or drowning, you know, one of those things. This is the lifeboat station, and this is the jetty for, I think, for the ferry. And this is pretty much the entirety of Roa Island. There's just a few little tiny streets or terraces of houses, and I think there might be a pub and maybe a little shop. I think there's a cafe as well, and that's it. And a telephone box. This little bit you're watching now was recorded the morning after the rest of the video, because we drove past this twice yesterday and went ooh ah, and didn't really think to stop and take some footage of it. So this was on the way down to, well, that's Roa Island over there, that's Peel Island. So we drove down here, this is through Rampside, and this thing here is the Rampside leading light. This was built in 1875, and it's a lighthouse of sorts. It's a beacon for guiding shipping, for navigation, because this is Morecambe Bay. This whole bay here is really treacherous and full of sandbanks and needs really careful navigation. And so this is a navigation light. It would have had a lantern in it, and ships will be able to take a bearing from it and from other beacons and figure out exactly where they were in the channels. I'll put some more information on the screen, but yeah, this was built in 1875. It's a brick structure, and it was one of quite a few of these beacons around the bay. It's now the only one of its kind that survives, although you can see other navigation beacons, more modern ones, out there in the estuary. So there we go, Rampside leading light. Couldn't really miss out on seeing that, so I came back here this morning just to get some footage of it. So that was the Sir John Barrow monument on Hoad Hill and the sands at Morecambe Bay. I hope this has been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.